looking to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. On today's headlines. A Metro Rail Transit Line or MRT3 personnel whose mother tested positive for the coronavirus UK variant has tested negative for the disease. At least 9 people have died and 10 are missing after a landslide caused by torrential rains swept away several homes in Indonesia, according to officials, with hundreds forced to flee their flooded homes. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar warns that troops at all levels of the military chain of command will be held accountable for the coup and repression of protests. Thailand's pandemic-shattered economy suffered its worst full-year performance in more than 2 decades, according to data on Monday, with officials citing the toll of both a gutted tourism industry and ongoing political upheaval. First, in the Philippines, a Metro Rail Transit Line or MRT3 personnel whose mother tested positive for the coronavirus UK variant has tested negative for the disease. Their tests all yielded negative results. His mother has also been released from the quarantine facility on February 6 after completing the required quarantine period and is now fully recovered, according to the MRT3 in a statement on Monday night. No cases of the UK variant have been identified among the rail line personnel who tested positive for COVID-19. The MRT3 worker was brought to a quarantine facility before January 20 and completed his mandatory quarantine on January 30. As of Monday, there are a total of 13 active cases among MRT3 depot personnel, down from 56 active cases on January 25. To avoid the spread of the disease, only essential employees with negative swab tests can report to the offices, the depot, and the stations. Staying in the Philippines, seismic activity and changes in Taal Volcano's main crater lake have been observed on Monday, despite the volcano under alert level 1 or abnormal, according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. In an advisory, the PHIVOC said 50 weak tremor episodes were recorded from 5 a.m. to 3 p.m., occurring at shallow depths. Seismic activity describes earthquake occurrences in the volcano. The signals increased hydrothermal activity beneath Taal Volcano Island. PHIVOC's director, Renato Solidum, told the Philippine News Agency on Monday night that, quote, tremors are typically not recorded. The PHIVOC's recorded 68 shallow tremor episodes in the volcano island since February 13. Mr. Solidum said the main crater lake is becoming more acidic and hotter. Local government units are advised to prepare in case of the volcano's renewed unrest and to assess previously evacuated barangays around Taal Lake for damages. The public is urged to observe precautions due to possible ashfall, ground displacement across fissures, and minor earthquakes in the event of a phreatic eruption. According to the advisory, geochemical data on the main crater lake indicate continuous acidification of lake water from a pH 2.79 to pH 1.59 between January 2020 and February this year, an unseasonal temperature high of 77 degrees Celsius, and CO2 H2 gas flux ratios consistent with shallow magma degassing. PHIVOC said there are increased possibilities of sudden steam-driven or phreatic explosions, lethal accumulations or expulsions of volcanic gas, and minor ashfall from the main crater. that can occur and threaten areas within the Taal Volcano Island. Entry into the island, Taal's permanent danger zone, especially the vicinities of the main crater and the Daang Castilla fissure, must remain strictly prohibited according to FIVOX. Pilots are advised to avoid flying close to the volcano as airborne ash and ballistic fragments from sudden explosions and wind remobilized ash may pose hazards to aircraft. At least 9 people have died and 10 are missing after a landslide caused by torrential rains swept away several homes in Indonesia, according to officials, with hundreds forced to flee their flooded homes. 21 people were initially reported missing after the disaster struck Sunday evening in a rural part of East Java. Indonesia's Search and Rescue Agency said it had found 9 bodies but was still searching for 10 others. The other 2 people had been rescued. The landslide also seriously damaged 8 houses, according to the agency. Pasuruan, a town in the province, was also flooded after a river overflowed due to the heavy rains, forcing more than 350 people to flee their homes. The UNICEF Philippines is recommending the conduct of pilot face-to-face classes in low-risk areas in the Philippines starting March, as it underscored the need for a safe and progressive return to in-person schooling. It said, quote, "The negative effects of keeping schools closed have been documented extensively and include learning loss, dropouts, mental health, and socio-emotional aspects, teen pregnancy, among others." It added that given that the ongoing health crisis will only exacerbate inequalities, especially for the most vulnerable and marginalized who have limited access to the internet, digital technology, and other home-based support systems, it is crucial to facilitate the safe, progressive return to in-person schooling as soon as possible. Citing a recent study by the World Bank on the impact of COVID-19 on Philippine households, UNICEF Philippines said only 20% of school-aged children were engaged in learning activities while adhering to community quarantine guidelines. In other news, the Metro Manila Council, or MMC, composed of mayors in Metro Manila and other government officials, have suggested delaying the reopening of cinemas in the region, citing possible health concerns in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. In a press conference on Monday, Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, or MMDA Chairman Benjamin Benhar Abalos Jr. said that the MMC has met to discuss the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Diseases decision to reopen indoor leisure establishments such as arcades, museums, and more, noting that cinemas were particularly problematic. Let's listen in.
Po yung issue ng, kasi nakikita mo din naman yung iba. Like for example, what we thought that almost everyone was with reference to the cinema. And almost everyone, lahat ng alcalde ay ayaw po ng ganito. Dahil of course, it's pretty close. You have to stay there for more than 1 hour. At of course, yung emission, medyo mga values, no? Lalong kumala. So, at the end of the day, it's the IATF who will decide, it's the president who will decide, and after that, we must act as one. Importante magkapatisa. But let me emphasize this.
In the meantime, he also said the MMC will begin discussing the IRR of reopening cinemas before their meeting with IATF on Wednesday. Earlier, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque announced that the reopening of cinemas in Metro Manila has been moved to March 1 to allow for consultations with local officials. He noted that the IATF respects the position of the MMC and that both national and local government officials understand the importance of the gradual reopening of the economy. 2 million people in Vietnam will be put under a raft of restrictions starting Tuesday after their northern province became the epicenter of a growing COVID-19 outbreak. Residents of Hai Duong province have been ordered to stay at home for 15 days, according to state media, as a nation widely praised for its handling of the pandemic struggles to extinguish a troubling new outbreak. Since late January, Vietnam has recorded 637 locally transmitted coronavirus cases, including 461 in Hai Duong province alone. Gatherings of more than 2 people will be banned, while schools, bars, restaurants, and karaoke parlors that were shut early ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday will remain closed. When they must go outside their homes, residents are instructed to stay 2 meters from others. Traffic through the province of 2 million will also be limited. State media reported with only vehicles traveling on essential business allowed to enter. In addition to the social distancing directive, Hai Duong authorities have asked that people quarantining at 3 centers in the province be relocated after infections recently began spreading at those sites, according to the government. Vietnam's latest coronavirus outbreak, which began in the north and has since spread to central and southern areas, has been linked to new, more contagious variants of the deadly virus, including the UK and South Africa strains. In response, containment measures have been stepped up, and hundreds of thousands of people living in areas linked to cases have been ordered to stay at home. But the country's most serious surge of cases yet is proving difficult to stamp out. The capital, Hanoi, and the southern commercial hub, Ho Chi Minh City, both recently ordered schools closed until the end of February. The communist nation has been lauded for mostly keeping a lid on its coronavirus outbreak through strict restrictions on movement, extensive quarantine measures, and a robust track and trace regime. As of Monday morning, Vietnam had tallied 2,229 coronavirus cases and 35 deaths across a population of 95 million. The Cambodian government today reported that it has found the first cases of its new variants among the foreigners from India and China who entered into Cambodia earlier this month, according to the Khmer Times. According to a statement released by the Ministry of Health, the new variant was identified by Institut Pasteur du Cambodia as 201/501Y.V1, VOC 2020-1201, and B117, which has originated from the United Kingdom and emerged with a number of mutations. The 3 patients are a 28-year-old Indian man and a 23-year-old Indian woman who arrived in Cambodia on February 3 from India on a Singaporean flight, plus a 23-year-old Chinese woman. The woman who flew from China to Cambodia passed through South Korea on February 7. According to WHO, the new variant has been detected in over 80 countries now around the world. Meanwhile, the UK government on Monday will introduce or has already introduced mandatory hotel quarantine rules for arrivals from dozens of countries deemed high risk for coronavirus variants as it tries to stop new strains from spreading. The new policy requires all UK citizens and permanent residents entering England from 33 countries on a wider travel ban list to self-isolate at their own expense in approved hotels for 10 days and take several COVID-19 tests. Other visitors from the countries currently on the so-called red list, which includes all South American nations, South Africa and Portugal, are currently barred from visiting under lockdown rules. Arrivals found to have given false information about being in one of the countries 10 days before travel could receive up to 10 years in prison, which has drawn criticism for being excessive. The government says it has signed contracts with 16 hotels so far, securing nearly 5,000 rooms near English airports with a further 58,000 rooms on standby. The 11-night quarantine, costing £1,750, includes transport, food, accommodation and security costs, as well as other essential services and testing.
Factual,
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
timely information, balanced, not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Agila Pilipinas! A one-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Agila Probinsya.
Sa mga taga-Iloilo at Antique,
Tune into Mata ng Agila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Agila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to thank our help outdoor.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of Yangon, facing off against soldiers and armored vehicles as the crackdown on anti-coup protests intensifies. Detained civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi will appear in court via video conference this week over charges brought against her by the new military junta. Let's take a look.
KIA တရားသူကြီးနဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့ဟိုလုပ်ပါတယ်နော်ဆွေးနွေးပါတယ်အဲ့တော့သူပြောပြချက်အရာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ယမန်ကသူက18ရက်နေ့ထိယူထားတာပါတဲ့ဟုတ်တယ်မဟုတ်သူ့ကျွန်တော်ပဲသွားဒါလည်းကောငါလည်းဒါလည်းပုံစံကြီးမှာဆက်ဆက်လာဒါလည်းကောငါ
Meanwhile, in a related news, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar warned that troops at all levels of the military chain of command will be held accountable for the coup and repression of protests. Take a look.
Because as fearful as they are of the brutal crackdown that they've seen in the past and the fact that the military could cut them down at any moment, what they're primarily fearful of, their primary fear, is going back and living under a brutal military dictatorship. They will not go back there. And no, I don't expect the proceedings to be fair. There's nothing fair about the junta. This is theater. It's just theater. And of course, nobody believes them. And they're just saying these outlandish things that nobody believes. And they don't get it because they're so insulated and isolated that the more they talk and the more they try to demonstrate that, look, we're reasonable people, the more ridiculous they're coming off to everybody. So they're undermining their own interests every time they open their mouths. So in a kind of an ironic way, the generals have proven their capacity to unify the country in ways that I have never seen. They're a unifier, but unfortunately for them, everyone is unified in opposition to them and opposition to the idea of once again being under a brutal military authoritarian regime. So they only hear stories of the horror of living under a brutal military regime from their parents and grandparents. They know from experience what it's like to have freedom. So they are committed to the freedom and to never having to live through the nightmare that is described to them by their parents and grandparents. Know this, even if you are down the chain of command, a soldier perhaps, someone on the streets, to simply say that I was following orders is not an excuse. It is not a justification. And everybody, no matter where you are on the chain of command, you will be held accountable.
Meanwhile, Malaysia on Monday defended a plan to deport 1,200 Myanmar nationals on Navy ships sent from their homeland just weeks after a coup, following criticism from the United Nations. News emerged last week the migrants would be sent home after the Myanmar military seized power and detained civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi at the start of February. Malaysian Immigration Chief Khairul Zaimi Daud said the detainees who will be deported on February 23 are accused of offenses including not having valid travel documents and overstaying their visas. He said no refugees registered with the UN or members of Myanmar's Rohingya Muslim minority are among those being deported. Rohingya, who are not recognized as citizens in Myanmar, have long suffered persecution in their mostly Buddhist homeland, and hundreds of thousands fled a 2017 military crackdown to neighboring Bangladesh. Malaysia is home to about 100,000 registered Rohingya refugees, as well as members of other communities such as the Chin and Kachin. The UN Refugee Agency said earlier they were seeking information from authorities about the deportations. But a spokeswoman added that since late 2019, they had been blocked from, or they blocked them from accessing immigration detention centers, meaning they could not determine who should be accorded refugee status. She also said vulnerable people, including women and children, are among those held in the facilities. Meanwhile, due to a spike in cases of coronavirus, 2 wet markets and 9 buildings in Pathum Thani were locked down until February 25th. Joining us live from Thailand is Faye Barte. Hello, Faye.
Good afternoon to you, Alma, and good afternoon to all our viewers. Yes, you are correct. One of the provinces here in Thailand, which is Pathum Thani, Bangkok to Pathum Thani, it will take about 30 to 45 minutes travel. And there is another spike of COVID cases there, and this is actually linked to Samut Sakhon outbreak. And the spike of the COVID cases is actually in the wet market also in Pathum Thani. Actually, the governor has ordered the closure of the 2 markets in Pathum Thani for only 5 days. However, today we already gathered some reports that they have already extended the security measures or the tough measures that they need to be implemented. And there are also 9 buildings that are considered to be locked down because of this current outbreak. And here in Pathum Thani, in Pathum Thani province, the records of the COVID cases are about 3 digits. it is actually they actually say some records 100 or 126 records, but for this time we haven't got the exact or the definite statistics of the COVID cases there in Pathum Thani province. However, according to Bangkok Post, the COVID-19 cases here in Thailand is only 72 cases. And this is actually a positive path for the kingdom, because from the Samut Sakhon outbreak, we received 900 cases there, and now it is actually 72 cases this today. And now the government in Pathum Thani, they are actually doing some tough measures and implementing some thorough cleaning of the markets. And there have been reports that the infected persons have been hospitalized and some other are staying in a quarantine facilities. Alma.
How about Bangkok? How is Bangkok doing? How are you doing over there?
Yes, actually, Alma, the health authorities is really focused in Pathum Thani province, because the outbreak here is, they are actually considering this, which is related to Samut Sakhon. It might have big outbreak, and it might record a lot of COVID-19 cases. So here in Bangkok, they have actually recorded few COVID-19 cases, and there are some establishments that are closed for the meantime, which are non-essential establishments or non-essential business. However, for the majority of the businesses here, they are actually open and ready to welcome some other people.
What about the rallies? Recently, you had a rally there after almost 2 months of calm. There was a recent rally. Is it going on again? How are you doing with this?
Right. Yes, Alma. For today, we haven't got any updates yet if they are going to conduct a protest in different areas of Bangkok. However, because of the rallies, and there is also some records that there are some people they are already in jail, and there would be no bail for them.
All right. Thank you very much for your updates there, Faye, and good to see you back.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alma. You stay healthy. This is Faye Barte reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Back in the Philippines, President Duterte's demand to make the United States pay if it wants to continue its Visiting Forces Agreement, or VFA, with the Philippines is in line with the country's national interests and not to extort money from the U.S. government. That is according to Malacanang. In a palace press briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque rejected how Vice President Leni Robredo likened Duterte's demand for U.S. to pay before he reconsiders his decision to scrap the VFA to extortion. Let's listen in.
Responsibility at your share. May mga nag-react at nagsabing extortion daw ito. Hindi po ito extortion. Paano ba ho natin iintindihin to? Ano niyo po, sa larangan ng international law, meron tayong prinsipyo na a state incurs state responsibility if it allows its territory in a manner used injurious to another state. Pagka nagkagera po, narito po ang mga puwersa ng mga Amerikano sa Pilipinas. Natural, anong gagawin ng mga kalaban ng mga Amerikano? Sasantuhin ba tayo? Miski sabihin natin na hindi po tayo kasali sa kanilang gulo. Hindi po, dahil pinayagan nga natin ang presensya ng mga kasundaluhang Amerikano at ang kanilang mga equipment dito po sa Pilipinas. Hindi lang po VFA ang nagbibigay ng ganyang karapatan sa mga Amerikano. Meron din po tayong tinatawag na EDCA, no? Kung saan naka-preposition po ang kanilang mga troops at ang kanilang mga equipment. So yan po yung sinasabi ng Presidente na kapag tayo po ay naipit sa isang putukan sa parte ng Amerika at ng kanyang mga kaaway, madadamay po tayo sa hidwaan. At ito pong sinabi ng Presidente, hindi naman dapat libre ito, no? Dahil napakalaking danyos ang pwedeng harapin ng Pilipinas pag tayo po ay nadamay sa putukan ng isang gera na hindi naman tayo kasali, pero dahil naririto ang mga Amerikano at ang kanilang mga kasundaluhan at kanilang mga equipment, pwede tayo maging valid military target. So, tama ba na sumingil tayo ng halaga para sa patuloy na pananatili sa Pilipinas sa mga Amerikanong mga sundalo at mga equipment. Bakit naman po hindi? Ito nga po meron pong isang pag-aaral, ang Stimson Center on Counterterrorism Spending, Protecting America while Promoting Efficiencies and Accountabilities. Abay, mga kababayan, ang conclusion nila, napakaliit talaga ng binibigay ng Amerika sa Pilipinas. Mantakin nyo po, no? Maliit nga lang po itong listahan nito, pero kung titignan nyo po, ang Pilipinas po ang pinakamaliit o isa sa pinakamaliit na natatanggap na military assistance, bagamat meron tayong mga sundaluhan at equipment dito sa ating bayan. Alam nyo po sa katotohanan, yung EDCA, pinayagan natin na lahat ng ating mga base militar po pwedeng gamitin ng mga Amerikano. So wais po mga Amerikano, hindi na sila dapat gumastos, hindi na sila gagastos sa permanent basis, gagamitin na lang nila yung ating mga base militar.
In February last year, the Philippines formally notified the U.S. about its intent to revoke the VFA. However, the VFA remains in effect after President Duterte ordered on June 1 last year the suspension of VFA termination in light of political and other developments in the region. A Singaporean activist was jailed for 3 weeks on Monday after pleading guilty to holding a small protest aboard a metro train against the controversial 1980s arrest of alleged communists. The tightly controlled city-state has tough laws against dissent that make it illegal for even one person to hold a demonstration without a police permit. Jolo Van Wam, who has had numerous run-ins with authorities, and a group of fellow activists staged a protest aboard the train in June 2017. They were demanding justice for a group of 22 people arrested in 1987 under tough laws that allow for detention without trial. The group was accused of being part of an alleged communist plot to overthrow the government. While the government insists the arrests were aimed at stopping a Marxist plot, critics say they were politically motivated. Wam was also charged with vandalism for pasting notices on the train's window and with refusing to sign a police statement related to the protest. He pleaded guilty to all 3 charges and was ordered to pay 8,000 Singaporean dollars or serve 32 days in jail rather. He chose to pay part of the fine and serve 22 days in jail. The judge described Wam as a repeat offender. He also served a 10-day jail sentence last year for organizing an event in 2016 that featured prominent Hong Kong democracy campaigner Joshua Wong speaking via Skype. Wam, 40, told the court, quote, "I'm not ashamed of what I have done and I believe my conscience is still clear." Phil Robertson, Deputy Asia Director at Human Rights Watch, criticized the Singapore authorities for pursuing an arbitrary, discriminatory and vindictive campaign against Wam.
Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events, fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
This is Princess Velasco. Enjoy your weekend with letters and music. Mag sound trip and chill every Saturday and Sunday at 1 p.m. on Net 25.
Ikaw na ang siyang magbabago sa aking buhay. Handang iwanan ang lahat.
Welcome back. Thailand's pandemic-shattered economy suffered its worst full-year performance in more than 2 decades, according to data on Monday, with officials citing the toll of both a gutted tourism industry and ongoing political upheaval. Last year's 6.1% contraction was the worst since a 7.6% decline during the Asian financial crisis in 1997, and officials said they expect the economy to expand at a much slower pace than initially predicted in 2021. The downgrade to 2.5 to 3.5% growth from a previous estimate of 3.5 to 4.5% came despite a slight improvement in the final 3 months of the year. It has rebounded from the previous quarter due to the government stimulus package that boosted spending, according to the Office of the National Economic and Social Development Council at a news conference. Although the kingdom was largely spared the worst of the virus, pandemic-spurred partial lockdowns have hit the economy hard. Meanwhile, Singapore's economy contracted by 5.4% in 2020, the Trade and Industry Ministry said on Monday, slipping into the worst recession since independence in 1965. Now, this marked the country's first annual contraction since 2001. However, the figure is slightly better than the estimate of a 5.8% contraction issued last month. In the fourth quarter of 2020, gross domestic product, or GDP, in Singapore contracted by 2.4% on a year-on-year basis, an improvement from the 5.8% contraction in the third quarter of this year, according to the ministry in a statement. However, the ministry projected that the economy will grow by 4 to 6% this year. The statement said the country's COVID-19 situation remains under control and a vaccination program is also underway. However, the pace of border reopening has slowed amidst the global surge in COVID-19 cases and the emergence of more contagious strains of the virus. The ministry also highlighted that advanced economies such as the U.S. and Eurozone are likely to reach population immunity by the second half of this year, which should in turn spur their economic recoveries. Singapore has so far reported nearly 60,000 cases, including 29 deaths and more than 59,600 recoveries. Back here in the Philippines, digital transactions in the country has exponentially grown in the past year, with GCash now being patronized by almost 1 in 3 Filipinos nationwide. In a statement on Monday, Mint, the operator of GCash and a subsidiary of Globe Telecom, said its base of registered users has grown to over 33 million at the end of 2020, 65% higher compared to 20 million users recorded at the end of 2019. Based on App Annie surveys, an authority in ranking digital applications worldwide, GCash has become the country's #1 finance app. and was among the top apps in the country for both Android and iOS platforms. Mint CEO Martha Sazon said the company has emerged as a trailblazer in providing digital financial services in the country. Earlier, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Benjamin Diokno committed to transforming the Philippines into a cash-light from a cash-heavy economy by converting 50% of total retail transactions in terms of both value and volume to digital payment channels by 2023. The BSP also aims to convert the country into a coinless society by 2025 and to double the percentage of Filipino adults with bank accounts to 70% by 2023. Exporters are being urged to use more privileges under the ASEAN Hong Kong Free Trade Agreement, or AHK-FTA, as Cambodia is scheduled to join the pact starting tomorrow. According to Ramon Sutpawitum, Director General of the Trade Negotiations Department, Cambodia is the only ASEAN member that had not applied the conditions of the agreement. That country recently notified the ASEAN Secretariat that it is ready to comply with AHK-FTA, meaning the pact covers all ASEAN member countries from February 12. The pact, or the AHK-FTA, was signed in November 2017 and enforced in June 2019 for Hong Kong and certain ASEAN members. According to Mrs. Auramon, Thai exporters are entitled to myriad benefits from the pact, notably for trade in goods, for which Hong Kong has already waived customs duties. Now, this led to Thailand's outbound shipments to Hong Kong increasing significantly. For instance, exports of frozen pork rose to $105 million last year, up 3,596% from the period prior to the pact's enforcement. ASEAN in Focus will be right back. Stay tuned.
Samahan sina Wedge Kujamat,
itong balitang panggising sa ulo ng mga balita.
Apple David,
Sa 60 katao ang isinugod sa ospital.
Phoebe Publico
Economic sabotage ang mga tiwaling negosyante.
at Cristel Pesalbon
Pagpresyo ng gulay, makakausap natin
para iatid sa inyo ang mga kaganapan at pangyayari sa bansa at sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Mga napapanahong isyu ng bayan. May balitang sports, entertainment at iba pang kaalaman. Simula Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 5 ng umaga sa paborito nyong morning show, Pambansang Almusal, dito sa Net 25.
Pambansang Almusal.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
Mines, banks, petroleum, agriculture, tourism, Myanmar's ruling junta has vested interest in large swathes of the country's economy, providing it a colossal and closely guarded fortune that the United States has targeted with sanctions. After last week's coup to oust civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi and the subsequent protest crackdown, calls have grown for international penalties. On Thursday, the U.S. slapped sanctions on the country's top brass. President Joe Biden said his administration was cutting off military leaders' access to $1 billion in funds in the U.S., while the Treasury Department blocked any U.S. assets and transactions with 10 current or former military officials held responsible for the February 1 coup. But experts believe the army chiefs still have access to enormous wealth from the sprawling conglomerates behind them. Through two highly secretive military-control-led behemoths, Myanmar Economic Holdings Limited, or MEHL, and the Myanmar Economic Corporation, or MEC, at least 133 companies in the country are wholly or partially overseen by the generals, according to a report by Justice for Myanmar. The opaque groups have their tentacles in industries as diverse as beer, tobacco, transportation, textiles, tourism, and banking. Much of the lucrative and largely unregulated jade and ruby trade is controlled by military-owned businesses. Although Myanmar is the world's largest producer of jade, and the trade is estimated to be worth billions of dollars a year, only a very small part of the financial windfall ends up in state coffers, with most high-quality stones believed to be smuggled over the border into China. Since 2011, the disaster-prone jade industry has remained controlled by a network of military elites, drug lords, and their cronies, according to NGO Global Witness. An MEHL subsidiary reportedly holds the largest number of jade mining licenses. The company, Myanmar Imperial Jade Company Limited, was among the 3 gems entities slapped with U.S. sanctions on Thursday. MEHL has partnerships with companies in China, Japan, South Korea, and Singapore, among others. It has enriched its shareholders in Myanmar, who, according to the conglomerate's government filings, are all current or retired military officials. And Singaporean Su Ang Ching used to wear a different outfit on all 15 days of the Lunar New Year, when it's customary to don new clothes to symbolize a fresh start. But this year, she will wear second-hand items exchanged for her old clothes as a store catering to people concerned about the impact of fast fashion on the environment. Take a look.
I mean, I've always been brought up by my parents to have a new set of clothes every Chinese New Year, and I fell into that behavior of consumerism, and I just always ensured that I have more than enough. Like, Chinese New Year is 15 days. In the past, I probably made sure I have 15 days of outfit, even if I'm not visiting, which is too much. Now, I think I'm a lot more settled and calm. As long as the item is new to me, I think it's good enough. And it was a point of reflection when I realized I had more than 50% of my wardrobe unworn, but I still felt like I didn't have anything to wear. Swapping allows me to be like a chameleon when it comes to fashion, but allows me to be environmentally conscious as well.
We would want to provide a platform where you can still dress up, express yourself of who you are through clothes, but at the same time, it's not damaging to the planet and to your wallet.
Now, that was Filipino clothes designer Ray Padit, and he founded the Fashion Pulpit nearly 3 years ago after learning about his industry's impact on the environment and poor treatment of garment workers. Several swapping initiatives, from permanent shops to pop-up events, have appeared in the affluent city-state in a bid to encourage consumers to make the most of what is already in their closets. The fashion industry is responsible for up to 1/10 of global carbon emissions, according to the UN Environment Program. Clothes cause emissions in a wide variety of ways, and that is from their manufacture to transportation and washing by the consumer. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nation. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back tomorrow. We live in interesting times.